Like, he was doing things that were just badass.
That was one of the coolest moments of my life.
I was really scared, but knowing that Dan had the gun, I did have the rifle, like, we would be okay.
All right, guys, welcome to today's show. And today on the line with me, I've got Stieg Phillips. And Stieg reached out to me on social media, told me a little bit about his story and what he's doing. And we've actually been talking and catching up. And it sounds like he's got some really cool things going on right now between his Muley Maniacs pages, a new line of product that he's developing right now, actually called Burrito Gear. And then he's got these tripods, which I've looked them up. I haven't had the opportunity to hold them in my hand yet, but just through pictures and stuff, they look like they're really amazing tripods, really high quality. And so I'm hoping to get my hands on one of those soon. But those are called Canati tripods. But all that to say, this guy's got a lot of irons in the fire, a lot of history in the outdoors. And so I'm excited to have him on the show. So welcome to the show, Stieg.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Could you just start out by maybe hitting a couple of these things that you're doing? Because you've kind of branched in a lot of different directions, and I'm interested to hear more about how that all came about.
Yeah, so I started my Instagram page, Muley Maniacs, probably like 6 years ago. And it was mainly just, I just wanted to post some pictures of some of the hunts that I go on and stuff like that. And people ended up liking it. So I decided, well, maybe I'll do some hats and shirts. So I made hats and shirts for Muley Maniacs, and they're all animals that I've harvested or helped harvest. And they didn't really take off. Nobody seemed to like them. So I was kind of trying to figure out what do people need in the outdoors? What's something that people really need that they don't have or can't get? And so I was in Sportsman's Warehouse and I was looking at tripods, because I live out west. We do a ton of glassing, ton of just hiking to the top of the hill and sit there and glass all day. So I was looking at them, and it ended up to get something that was quality, something that was going to be what I wanted. I was going to be close to $1,000.
Man.
So I said, it can't be that expensive to build this stuff. You got to be able to build this stuff and have quality products for cheaper than that. So I started looking into it and trying to find a place to build them for me. And so I found a place after like 3-4 months of looking, and started getting everything developed, ordered a prototype, and it came in right before my deer hunt this last year. And I just took that thing and just beat it as much as I could. And I'd open it up as tall as it'd go, throw it in the bed of the truck, and just drive like 50 miles an hour down a dirt road, just trying to get it to fall out or something, or trying to get it to rattle around and things to come loose. And I'd stop and there'd be a pile of sand, and I'd get out and I'd run the legs through the sand and all of the moving parts, trying to get stuff to grind and things like that. And I couldn't get it to grind. And by the end of my deer hunt, my prototype looked like a piece of junk, but it still performed excellent. So I said, all right, this is the one. It works good. We'll just go ahead and we'll get them ordered and start getting them out there. And so I released them back in September, and I've had a lot of really good feedback, and a lot of guys really like them. And so I took a tripod that should be worth close to $1,000 and dropped it down as low as I could. And the combo package that comes with the head, the tripod, and 2 quick release plates is under $400.
Wow, that's amazing. So after that first trip, was there anything at all that you ended up having to change, or since with all the feedback, have you had like new innovative ideas for them and anything you want to change on it?
Well, after my prototype, the head was a little bit bigger than what I had planned, and it just had a couple little funky parts. So I redesigned that head and just made it a little smaller, made things a little more compact, a little more sleek look to it. And it's worked really well. A lot of my feedback I've got is my negative feedback is stuff that I look at and go, well, it's just because you've been using the same tripod for the last 20 years. It takes a little while when you change something to get used to it.
Yeah.
So my feedback that I got was a few people had said it's too tall. It's not compact enough, which I don't quite understand, because most tripods with the head on it, they're over 30 inches in length, and mine's at 25. But to combat that, I designed a more packable tripod that we just released about a month ago. And it's the Pro Backpacker model. And it's actually 18 inches in length. It weighs just barely over 3 pounds. It's like 3.035 or something like that. And it's actually tall enough that, so I'm 5'10", and it's tall enough that I can stand in glass with it, no matter if I'm on a steep hill or whatever.
Man, that's awesome. So did you have like an engineering background, or how did you decide like, hey, I can actually design something like this on my own?
No, I just started looking at tripods and looking at stuff and looking at the tilt of the legs and things like that. And then honestly, I didn't even really draw up any designs. When I started talking with this factory that did it, I just basically told them, hey, this is what I want. I want carbon fiber legs. I want this center post to be carbon fiber so everything's lighter. I want the legs tilted out at this angle, things like that. And they just were able to do it.
That's so cool. So moving forward, do you think you're going to branch out into other types of tripods, or is it going to mainly be like glassing tripods? I know there's a lot of companies coming out with like shooting tripods now. Like, I mean, some super heavy duty ones that your gun can clamp into, and you can actually shoot from a standing position and feel confident taking, 300, 400 yard shots with it.
So I've actually got a prototype for a shooting tripod that I've been playing around with a little bit. I actually am working on redesigning the way that your gun mounts to a tripod.
Okay.
Because I looked at the clamps, I looked at the archer rails, and I didn't like either of them. I didn't like how big and bulky the clamp was hooked onto your gun. And to attach an archer rail, you have to drill holes in your stock.
Mm-hmm.
And this last winter, I just got a $4,000 gun done, and there's no way in hell I'd drill a hole in that stock.
Yeah.
So I'm actually working on redesigning that. I'm right in the middle of testing some prototypes right now.
Well, man, I'm excited to see what all you come up with. And like I said, I want to get my hands on one of those tripods, because just looking at the pictures and just the design of it, like looking at it, it looks sleek. It looks like it would be lightweight, but also heavy duty. And so I'm excited to see what you come up with on the other fronts as well. Let's talk a little bit about that first hunt, actually, because I like to share stories on here. And I know obviously you do, with how many animals you've taken or been on hunts where an animal's been taken. Can you share a little bit about that hunt that you took you took your tripod on for the first time?
Yeah, so I'm sure I'm like most guys. When you draw a deer tag, you get really excited and you want to go hunting right away. And you don't realize that it's going to be about a month before the deer even have horns where you can tell if it's going to be big or not.
Yeah.
So I actually, when I drew the tag, I went out and bought a new bow and just started practicing shooting. And then about mid-June, I started scouting. And out here in Nevada, it's really competitive. There is a lot of big time guides out here. There's a lot of big time hunters that really know what they're doing. So in reality, I'm just a small fish in a big pond out here. But I ended up finding a buck in June. And in June, he was like a 170-inch 5x6. And I thought, man, he's gonna be a big buck. He's gonna be a pretty big buck. So I ended up going back and just trying to watch him, trying to figure out where he was hanging and what he was doing. And in doing that, I turned up 3 more bucks that were big bucks. And so I thought, man, well, this is sweet. I've got options now. I don't have to worry about competing with somebody, because if they're going after this buck, I can go after this one. And opening morning rolled around, and there were about 20 people right there in a 3-mile square radius, all hunting the same 4 deer.
Oh man.
So I said, I'm not doing that. I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
So I moved back up. One of the 4 bucks was in a little bit different spot. He was still fairly close, but he was a few miles off. So I moved back up and started watching him, and he was a great big 4-point mainframe. I figured he was right around that 27, 28 inches wide.
Wow.
And he had a great big floater main beam on his left side that just dropped off. He was a sweet buck. But he was hanging on a wide open hillside, and I've got a bow, trying to figure out how I'm going to get even kind of close enough to take a shot. So after like a week of going up there and watching, and my hunt had started, and I was trying to figure out how I'm going to get close to this deer, my brother and I hiked up there, and we could hear somebody talking. And we go down and we're looking, and sure enough, there's a guide sitting there with his hunter watching the deer. And so we just said, you know what? It's not worth the competition. It's not worth trying to beat them up here and then trying to beat them up to get to the deer. We're either going to scare the deer away, or somebody's going to get pressured into making a bad shot or something like that. So we don't need to mess with that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I just walked away and let them have it. I figured I'd come back in a week or two. Most guided hunts out here are like a week long. So I figured a week later I'd come check and see if I could find the deer. And so I went looking other places. The 3 bucks that were all right there with each other that I had planned on hunting, all 3 of them ended up getting killed in the first week of the hunt.
Wow.
And so I just kind of went looking at other places and came back, never saw that buck again with the floater main beam. I don't know if they killed him or if they scared him off, but I never saw him again. Then it got down to the last week of my hunt, and I told my wife, I said, if I see just a good buck, I'm going to take him, because I never killed a deer with my bow. I might as well just kill one with my bow so that I can say that I have.
Yeah.
So I went back up into a spot where we'd had a lot of really good luck in the past. And I did about a 3-mile hike out to where I was looking down off the edge of this great big mountain. And I'm sitting there watching, and all of a sudden this 185 inch 4x5 comes walking out. And I went, well, there he is. That's my good buck that I told my wife I would kill if I saw. So I start trying to put a stock on him, and I'm sneaking down through shell rock on this great big mountainside, and it's not working real well. Every step I make is making way too much noise. And the buck just he doesn't spook, but he just kind of wanders along the hillside. And so I get down to the bottom, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to parallel him, and hopefully I can find him again. So I just start paralleling him, and I'm walking along, and all of a sudden these sheep, like farmers' sheep, are on the middle of this mountainside in the middle of nowhere. And I'm going, what in the heck's going on here? And I'm maybe 30 yards from them, and they don't even know I'm there. But they're all looking straight down the hill from me. So I come around the corner, I look down the hill, and I'm like, oh crap, there he is. And so I ranged him. He was 70 yards. And I'd been practicing all summer at 100, because I knew I was hunting open country and I was going to have to be able to take a long shot with my bow.
Yeah.
And so I knocked an arrow and drew back, and I didn't even kind of think about the angle that I was on. I let it fly, and it went like 2 feet over his back.
Oh man.
And he took off running. Never saw him again. And then at that point, I was really bummed, because I hadn't seen a buck like that in a week. And then I just missed a shot that should have been an easy shot if I would have just thought about it a little more.
Yeah.
So,
man,
yeah.
that's
So
heartbreaking.
Yeah. So that night, I got home, and one of my good buddies called me, and he said, hey, you know the ranch like 40 miles above town? I said, yeah. And he said, I was up there today. He's a farmer, so he was up there looking at stuff with them. Because I was up there this morning, and they've got like 10 bucks hanging in those fields that are over 190, and right there close to 200. And he goes, there's nobody up there. And which is funny, because it's usually a really popular spot that everybody goes to.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll go check it out. So I called in, got work off, and went up there. And I pull in right as the sun's coming up, and there's elk everywhere. Elk are coming out of the fields like crazy. I can't even find a deer. And I'm thinking, this guy just sent me up here because he knew there was a ton of elk, and he knew it would frustrate me because I wouldn't see a deer. I mean, there had to have been 500-600 head of elk. There was a ton of elk coming out of there. And so eventually, like 9 o'clock rolls around, the elk are all gone. I hadn't seen a deer. I went, well, I guess I'll go back home, and I'll just go into work. And there's no point in just being out here all the way through midday. And right as I was getting ready to load up, this buck comes over and he jumps the fence right out into the middle of the sagebrush valley. And I put my spotting scope on, looked through it just long enough to tell that he had a couple inlines, or he had a couple extras, and he was a really nice buck. I went, well, that's good enough. I told my wife I'm shooting the first nice buck that I get a chance at. So I had no idea what he was. So I just started sneaking down through the sagebrush, thinking, if I can even kind of get close enough to this thing with my bow in this sagebrush valley, I'm going to be lucky as can be.
Yeah.
So sure enough, I get about a half a mile down into the valley and he comes right up over the ridge, right towards me. And so I just squat down in the sagebrush. I get my rangefinder out and I'm trying to range him and I'm shaking so bad I can't range him. I'm bouncing from like 10 yards to 300 yards trying to range him because I can't hold still. And so I just put my rangefinder down. I said, okay, he's coming right to me. I'm just going to let him get as close as I can. And then I know he's close enough that I can just put all my pins on him and I'm going to hit him in the vitals. So he just kept coming. And he got into where I thought he was about 20 yards. And I drew back and just let it fly. And he was hard quartering to me. And that arrow went in right behind his front shoulder and went all the way through and came out his other hind quarter. And he turned and whirled and ran back down into the valley and went about 50 yards and just went right to the ground.
Oh, man.
So I get down there to him and I'm pretty good at telling what a deer is when they're on hoof. But the second they're on the ground, I struggle, especially if it's a buck that I shot.
Yeah.
So I got up there to him and I went, okay, good. I told my wife I was going to kill a nice buck. He's like 25 inches wide. He's a 170-inch deer. He's a nice buck. He's not what I wanted, but he's still a good buck. And so I called my dad and started calling people, see if I could get somebody to help me. And everybody was busy. Everybody was working. So I loaded the deer up myself and started heading back into town. And I thought, well, I better stop by and show my buddy that told me that there were some bucks out there because he'll like that. And I pulled down there and get out of the truck and go over and he looks at it. And first things he says is, man, that thing's a giant. I went, oh, he's a nice buck, but he's nothing special. And he goes, I think he's bigger than you think. I said, oh, yeah, whatever. So he goes over and he grabs his tape measure out of his truck and goes over there and pulls it across him and goes, well, he's 33 inches wide.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Like, oh, maybe he's a little bit bigger than I thought. So he starts just measuring a few things out real quick with his hard tape and just real rough, real quick. And he gets done and he looks at me and goes, you let me know what he scores. He's between 195 and 200. So I hustled over to the taxidermist trying to save the velvet and got it saved. And I got home that night and thought, well, I guess I'll throw tape on him real quick and see what I get. I taped him out 3 times and I got him at 200 every time, dead on.
Oh, my gosh.
Ended up being a lot bigger buck than I'd planned on, or than I thought he was.
That is so awesome. I've only been on one mule deer hunt. Because I was born and raised on the wrong side of the Mississippi, I guess. And I went out to Colorado 2 years, lived out there and hunted. In my second year, I drew a mule deer tag. And I was like, man, I'm going to be happy with literally anything. I've never hunted mule deer, never killed one, obviously. And I was fortunate enough for the last day of the hunt, or that we were hunting, we were following people back. I had just shot a bull elk and I was following these guys back. They were in a side-by-side. I was on a four-wheeler, and they pull over and they all jump out and they're like, Dan, right here, there's a big mule deer buck, like, get ready. And so I had to get my gun out of the case. And I just said, you guys keep going. I'm just going to kind of put a stalk through here. I hadn't seen it at this point, but everybody said it's a good deer. And so sure enough, I ended up walking and following, like, it was probably between 7 and 10 does for the last hour and a half of daylight. And it was right at the last like 5-minute window that I could shoot. All of a sudden I look, and I've been watching these does this whole time, and out of nowhere, right in the middle of them, this buck shows up. And I didn't have time to look at it. I mean, I just knew, like, that's the buck. That's what they told me to go after. I pulled my gun up, shot, because I knew I was almost out of daylight. And I still don't know what it ended up scoring. I've never even really scored any deer that I've killed. If I take it to a taxidermist or get a mount, then I'll have them tape it for me. But this was it was a mainframe 4x4 with 2 short brow tines, and it ended up technically being a 5x7 if you count the small kickers. I don't know if you guys do that for mule deer, but growing up in Wisconsin, if it was anything, we would always count it as a point. But so yeah, that's all I've had experience wise with mule deer hunting. But I did apply this year for a mule deer tag, and I really hope I draw. I'll find out here in, I think, like 2 weeks if I drew that for Colorado. So
Yeah. There's some big old bucks over there in Colorado. That's some fun hunting over there.
I saw a couple really nice ones. We actually saw one at about 1,000 yards, and it was in like a shadowy area on a wooded hillside. So we couldn't see the body or anything. Like, all we could see were ears and antlers. And for the first probably 5 or 10 minutes we were looking at it and everybody was able to find it, everyone thought it was an elk. It was that big. I mean, it was every bit of 33, 34 inches wide. And the height on it was what made everyone think it was an elk. They were like, man, that thing's got 22 to 24 inch manes. Like, I mean, like, they were just huge. And then finally, it wasn't until we got about 400 yards closer that we actually realized it was a mule deer. And I had a tag for it, but at that point we were really going after an elk for my buddy. That was the whole purpose of the drive that we took that day, was to go find an elk. And so we did not go after it.
Yeah. We had a buck. Let's see, it would have been back in 2013. We had some friends from northern Utah draw a tag, and I'm originally from Utah. I live in Nevada now. And they'd drawn a tag in the unit that I grew up hunting. And so they called me and my dad and said, hey, we got tags. Can you guys take us out hunting? So we're like, yeah, we'll take you out. And it actually ended up being really fun, but we killed a really, really nice buck opening morning. He was 185-inch deer. Really, really nice buck. And then the last day of the hunt, actually, we were cruising down this road and we spotted a buck down at the edge of the trees in this burn. And at first we thought it was a tree down there just because he wasn't real wide, but he was super tall. And all we could tell was he was really tall and he had okay forks. And so we set up, and we do a lot of long range shooting. You know, I probably shot, I don't know, probably every year when we're getting ready for hunting season, whoever has the tag probably shoots 300 or 400 rounds at distances that are a long ways and make sure that the gun is dialed in and ready to go. So we set up on this buck at 700 yards, and our buddy gets up there who's never shot long range at all, and he shoots and misses, and the buck kind of walks back into the trees. We're like, oh man, oh well, we had no idea. And the buck comes walking right back out, stands in the exact same spot. We're like, okay, just be steady, breathe, the gun's rested solid, just squeeze the trigger slow. So he just squeezed the trigger slow, and sure enough, shoots. The buck just picks his head up from feeding like nothing's happening, walks back into the trees, and just hunched up and just took off on a death run.
Oh man.
So we're like, cool. We got a solid buck. We got a really nice buck opening morning, and we killed a decent buck today. Well, we get down there and actually walk up on the deer, and he was a 5x6. He was only like 20 inches wide, but he had over 50 inches in mass.
Oh my goodness.
He ended up being a 216-inch deer.
I need to come hunting with you. It seems like there's so many giant deer that they all look small to you guys now.
I don't know that there's that many giant deer. I just think that we're terrible at figuring out what's going on.
I'll tell you, if I saw a deer that was 170 inches, I'd be like over the moon. My biggest whitetail to date's like 142. And like I said, I haven't even taped out that mule deer, so I don't know what it is. But mule deer hunting, I started watching videos on it several years ago, and I was like, man, I could get so hooked on this because like you, I love to shoot long range. I mean, around here, I can't do it all that often because there's so many hills and stuff, and it's not like wide open. The property boundaries, property's broken up every 40 acres. It seems like sometimes it's bigger than that, but so I can shoot about 450 on this back 40, but I have to drive about an hour if I want to shoot out to like 700 plus. But yeah, there's something about like the combination of long range and hunting that, I don't know, some people like to be really close, and I think I would love that as well, like that stalk you talked about with your bow, trying to get nice and close because I love archery. But it seems like I'm always drawn back to long range shooting for some reason. So that sounds like a great hunt.
Yeah, for me it's all the same. I had the same rush with my buck this year that I shot at 20 yards as I had with my big typical that I killed that I shot at 500 yards. It's all the same. It's the exact same rush. So I'll take whatever I can get when it comes to hunting.
Yeah. I'm always curious about this with people because, some people get buck fever really intensely. Some people don't really get it. I'm the type of person that like I'll get excited when I see one coming in or like when the pursuit is actually on, but I don't get like buck fever in the moment of truth. Like when it's time to get the crosshairs settled and pull the trigger, I don't get buck fever. But as soon as I pull that trigger or let that release go, all of a sudden I'm shaking. It's like at that point it hits me. What about is it the same for you, or how do you deal with buck fever or panic or whatever you want to call it in that moment?
So it seems like for me, I'll have pretty bad buck fever leading all the way up to when I'm about to take the shot. And then when I'm about to take the shot, I seem to be able to calm down enough to make the shot. And then as soon as the gun or the bow goes off, it's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
I mean, if like you're out with somebody, you take the shot and you miss, Well, with my family, it's all, as soon as that gun goes off, the buck fever goes nuts. You miss or that deer or elk doesn't go to the ground, it's people would think that we hated each other, how we start yelling at each other about things.
Oh man, what another thing I'm curious about, what gun are you using for your hunts? I know you said you shot one at 500 yards. I mean, you can't just you can and you can't just go out and buy a gun like that. What caliber and what brand are you shooting?
So I shoot a Savage. I don't even know what the model is for the Savage. I think it's their Hunter edition,
Okay,
but I shoot a 338 Lapua.
nice.
So it's a big gun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a serious round. I remember I've shot with guys that have those. I had a 338 Win Mag for my first elk hunt. But those 338 Lapuas are no joke. When I was looking for new rifles, I was debating getting one, and then I saw the price per box of ammo for 20 rounds, and I said, yep, not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. The only way you can do it and afford to do it is if you're reloading. And now you can't even afford to reload.
No, everything's just I'm like, man, between 2020 and 2021, it seems like you can't find toilet paper, you can't find lumber, you can't find gas, and you can't find ammo.
Yeah. 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 It's pretty bad. We had to look really hard this winter to find the powder that we like to load to shoot for coyote calling, and we ended up finding 1 pound of it, which is better than nothing. I just hope that things will calm down enough that we can get more before we run out of that pound of powder.
Yeah, I think they'll go back to normal here. I would say in another 6 months. I think it's actually going to be quite a while yet before they calm down again, but we'll see. Fingers crossed. I know some people have been having luck finding ammo again. I think the manufacturers are starting to catch up again, but it's really people on social media saying like, oh, ammo is short, and then they all buy it up in bulk and it sits in a closet until it starts to rust, and the rest of us are like, oh, I guess we're not shooting at all for the next 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. That seems to be how it's going.
Let's switch a little bit on topics here and start talking about this Bruto gear that you're coming out with. You shared a little bit about it with me, and it's something that I'm excited about, even just hearing a few minutes of it. So could you share that with the listeners and what you're designing for that?
Yeah. So out here, I mean, I don't really know about hunting other places much. I'm sure it gets pretty brutally cold, but out here it gets, last year's rifle hunt, I saw it as low as 3 degrees with about a 20-mile-an-hour wind. So it gets pretty brutally cold.
Yeah.
And the problem that I've got with it is every time it gets cold, I always end up looking like the Michelin Man out walking around. I can't, I've got 10 layers on and I can barely move. And so I wanted to design a camouflage and a battery heated system that was lightweight and you could move around in it good. It was waterproof. I wanted to take these top of the line camouflages and I wanted to use their fabrics that they were using and make a battery heated system to keep you warm. And I was able to find a guy that said he could do it for me. So he actually just got me mock-ups yesterday, and I'm getting prototypes done up that I should have in like a month. And then I'll start testing from there. I designed my own camouflage pattern and went ahead and threw threw that over on to him, and he got it all set up where I think it's going to be a really good setup. I sure hope so. I hope it's what guys are going to want. I figure if nothing else, I'll definitely use it because I hate wearing tons of layers.
Oh yeah. If you need any field testers for that, just let me know. I'd be happy to try some out. I know here, like in Missouri, where I currently live, it gets crazy in a hurry. I mean, we'll go from snowing one day to like 85 degrees the next day, and then it'll be back down to a high of 40. And it drives me crazy because I'll get like a certain season of clothing out. So I'll get like my fall clothing out. And then all of a sudden the temperature drops, or it's 90 degrees and I'm sitting in a tree stand, and I'll literally bring an extra jacket just to hang on the branch above me so the sun's not beating on me the whole time. So to have a lightweight clothing brand that you can heat up with the click of a button, that sounds unreal.
Yeah. I hope that it works out good. It's definitely something new. It's something that I don't think, at least I've never heard of anybody that has come out with a camouflage done up in that, that stretchy polyester fabric that's battery heated. So hopefully it's something that's good.
Yeah, I think people will eat it up like crazy because I mean, I remember when I first heard about the Thermacell heated insoles for your boots. I went online and bought those immediately. Like the first time I heard about them, I looked them up and first I made sure that the ratings were decent because I was like, I don't want to buy these and then they not be good. I know the concept is amazing. So I bought those because especially when I go up to Wisconsin for whitetail season, it could be 20 below sometimes when we're out there. And no matter how good your boots are, they will not stay warm that whole time. And so I bought those, and that was a game changer. So to think that my entire outfit could be heated like that, man, talk about being out in any weather.
Yeah. Man, I don't know how you guys can do that sitting in a tree stand in that brutal cold weather. I feel like I'd die if I had to do that.
You get kind of used to it. I feel like once I moved down to Missouri, I became soft, and it's not as easy for me to do it now. But I remember when I was a kid, I would go out and there could be 2 feet of snow on the ground and it could be in the single digits. And I would just walk out there in my boots, in my full outfit, and I would jump up in the air on a hillside and then just plop down in a seated position in the snow and almost make a little recliner right there in the snow. I mean, to where 50% of my body was below the snow line. And then I'd just sit there all day long. And the nice thing about the snow is it's an insulator. And so, if there's a lot of contact made with the snow, as long as you're not melting it and getting wet, you can stay a lot warmer if you're actually tucked down in the snow like that than if you're just in the open air.
Yeah.
Well, man, I for real, I can't wait to see some of these products. And you said you're currently in Nevada, right?
Yep.
Okay. We're going to be, I haven't been to Nevada yet, but I've heard great things about the hunting out there. And obviously after all these big buck encounters you've had, I might have to start looking into more of it. But we're going to be heading out to Utah for the first time in early June. I think the first week of June, we're going to go out there and I'm going to see what all the hype is about Utah and everything west of Colorado.
Yeah. Well, if you make it over this way, let me know.
Yeah, I will for sure. I'd love to see your product, get to meet in person. And what hunts do you have planned this year?
So draw results haven't come out for Nevada yet. They will come out at the end of the month. And we just gotta wait and see. Hopefully we can draw a deer tag, or I'm getting close to where I should be getting enough points that I could maybe draw an elk tag. So we just got to wait and see. Hopefully something good.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'll let you know if I draw my moose tag this year. And you want to get some good pictures and product testing for the camo or the tripods, you can bring it out on a moose hunt with me.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Don't get your hopes up. I think my odds are like 0.003% or something like that. But I'm still optimistic.
You gotta be.
Before I let you go, we talked a bunch about these different brands and about what you do. Could you give everybody an idea of where they can find your stuff, they can find your product, or they can follow along with your journey?
Yeah, so all of my tripods and stuff, everything I do will be available on MuleyManiacs.com. If you follow me on Instagram, either at Muley Maniacs, Canati tripods, Baruto gear, or I have another clothing line called We Hunt Public. If you follow any of those, it's got a link right to the website in the bio, and you'll be able to see all the new stuff that we're coming out with, all the testing that we do, and just all that good stuff.
Man, that's awesome. I would highly encourage anybody listening to this to go check out what Stieg's been coming up with. And if nothing else, just go look at the pictures on his social media channels and start getting excited about hunting season again. I know I'll just thumb through those every now and then and be like, man, it's just a different world hunting in the mountains or even on the west side of the mountains as it is from hunting farmland over here in the Midwest. There's something about it, and it's doable. Like, people need to understand, like, they can go out and actually hunt mule deer and hunt elk. And I know Western people don't like when I say that, because they're like, don't drive more people out here, we're busy enough as it is. But there's just so much land and so much opportunity out there to go and do a hunt that you may not ever have been able to do before.
Yeah, there definitely is. And it's funny, I've got a few guys from the Midwest and stuff that have followed me, and I say something about hunting on public land, or my buck that I killed this year was killed on public land, and all of them are like, oh, there's no way that thing was killed on public land. You can't kill a deer like that on public land. And they don't realize that out here, the unit that I hunt, 90% of it is public land. There's not much for private land there.
That's amazing. I mean, that you've had that kind of success. I've heard of people. I know one other person personally that killed a 200-inch muley on public land. And that was in Colorado. It was actually a collared mule deer. He got up there, and it was like, he knew that the regulations allowed for you to shoot it. And in fact, the conservation department, I think Colorado Parks and Wildlife, has publicly said, if you see a collared animal and would shoot it if it didn't have a collar on it, still shoot it, and then just give us the collar back, because it gives them a more accurate mortality study that way. But he ended up shooting one that I can't remember. I think it was like 207 or 211, but with a radio collar on it. And he wanted to get it mounted with the collar, but he had to give it back. And so he ordered a replica collar on Amazon and put it on his mount.
That's awesome. That's a big buck. That's cool.
Yeah, I would probably freeze. I think at that point I would get buck fever long before the trigger was pulled, and probably just lock up and not be able to do anything. That's a huge animal.
Yeah, that is definitely a big deer.
Well, Stieg, I really do appreciate you hopping on with me today. And again, I look forward to checking out your gear and hearing more about what you're doing. It sounds like you're going to have success, especially with the innovation that you're coming out with in the hunting industry. So thanks for being on, and we'll definitely have to get back on and chat in the future about your products and about your hunting stories.
Yeah, you bet. Just let me know.
All right, will do. Thanks a lot.